Good afternoon, this is Josh from Mass Gunworks. I was in my shop, today's Sunday, kind of messing around, and I wanted to make a video about the differences that I've noticed between Remington and Savage rifles, specifically the Remington 700 and the Savage 110. There's a couple different models of Savage. You got a 110, 111, and a 112. They're all pretty much the same. One's a long action, one's a short action. They're all pretty well the same. So before I dive into that, I want to take a minute and thank all of you that have been following and watching and subscribing and commenting. It's really uplifting to me to be able to banter back and forth with you guys. It's fun. I got into doing stuff on YouTube because I like teaching and I enjoy sharing what I learn. So it's just nice to see that's being well received. So if you like what you see here, please subscribe, give me a thumbs up, and leave a comment. All right, so we're going to jump right into this. So I have a Remington 700 action that a customer gave me, and I am putting a new barrel on it for him. So the barrel we got is a Hart 308 stainless steel barrel. It's been chambered, but it has not been fit to the action yet, and that's where I come in. So here is the receiver and the bolt, and I have cut on the lathe in a practice barrel that I have chambered and machined and all that, and they fit together great. I also have a Savage action and bolt that I was using for a personal project that I finished up. I've got a barrel blank here that I have profiled and chambered, threaded, and all that good stuff. So I got a list here on my marker board. So I've got 5 key things that I've noticed that are different. And spoiler alert, my preference is toward the Savage. So the differences tend to lean in favor of the Savage. Okay. Head spacing, machining, bolt construction, the recoil lug, and Accurizing. And we're going to go over what that is called blueprinting. We're going to go over what that means a little bit. So I'm probably going to be able to cover a couple of these at the same time. So I'm going to start with setting headspace. When you go to set headspace on a Remington and a Savage, essentially what you're doing is you're having to machine the chamber to a certain depth to make sure that the space between the bolt face and your chamber are correct and where they're supposed to be. You don't want your headspace to be excessive. That can cause accuracy and safety issues for the shooter, and it can damage the firearm. You don't want the headspace to be too tight. Again, accuracy, safety, damage the firearm. So there is a small window of, I think it's about 4 to 6 thousandths of an inch that you have to stay within. Some guys will do it tighter than that because they're a competition bench rush shooter and they like having that tight headspace for accuracy. But there's a small window that you need to stay within, okay? with a Remington, there's a lot of measurements you have to take. You need to figure out the distance with the bolt in the receiver, okay? You need to figure out the distance between this space here, the bolt nose, the bolt lug, and the base, the face of the cartridge pocket, okay? And you also have to add in distance for your recoil lug, okay? Your recoil lug is basically a washer that sits between the barrel and the action, and it helps keep the action of the barrel in the stock in the position it's supposed to be in as it's shot. So the energy from the spent cartridge when it gets fired will, transfer that recoil here, and that will stop against the shelf in the gun stock. So the Remington, like I said, there's those measurements. So what's going on here is, as you engage the bolt to the barrel, it's going to slide inside a channel in the receiver. It's going to push the cartridge in, and it's going to lock, okay? And it's going to create a seal and hold the cartridge in place as it's fired, okay? So this bolt nose here, notice it sticks out a little bit, and I've got a recess machined. That bolt nose is supposed to go in there, okay? Remington designed this way because it adds another direction that the gases have to turn as they're escaping to come out, the rear of the chamber. And every time you make something that has a force behind it change direction, it loses force. So gas, liquid, chocolate, if you're forcing it through something and it has to make a 90-degree turn, it's going to lose a lot of momentum. Okay, so with a Savage, you don't have that because the bolt just butts up to the rear of the chamber, and that's it. There's a little bit of space that you program in, but that's essentially it. So, but anyways, that's a short version of how you establish headspace with a Remington. So there's a lot of machining that has to take place here, and a lot of measuring that has to take place here, because you need to make sure that you get this pretty well spot on, okay? There is some variation, and I'm going to bring you over here and show you some differences in some measurements. So I've had two of these come in, and I've had to take the barrel off and do some work to that action in the barrel. Sorry, I'm trying to get things in here. And I took some measurements. So the first measurement that I took was the bolt nose recess, and across the two barrels, the diameter of the bolt nose recess, the hole in the back of the barrel where the chamber ends at, that the bolt nose sits into, one was 705 thousandths, one was 703 1/10 of a thousand, one was 152 thousandths deep, and the other one was 156 thousandths deep. So there's a little bit of variation, but not much, okay? So the shoulder for the recoil lug should be right here. Okay, there's the threads that go in. Recoil lug, that's on that shoulder. The measurement from the mouth of the chamber to that shoulder on one barrel was 875. The other one it was 876. And these are both Model 700s. They're both factory rifles. You know, their tolerances are pretty close. 10 in diameter over the threads. So I just took a micrometer and I measured, you know, over the threads. 1 inch 58 thousandths, 1 inch 57. Then I got some thread measuring wires and I measured over the wires. Here's a little, there's about a thousandths difference. Okay. So one was 1 inch 87 3/10, one was 1 inch 86 3/10. So they're pretty close. Okay. In the headspace. So what I did is I took my headspace gauge, I put it in the chamber, and I measured from the back of the headspace gauge with the depth micrometer to the shoulder. Okay. And the headspace on one was 883 thousandths. Headspace on the other was 885 thousandths. Okay. Like I said, you've got about a 6 thousandths of an inch window. So there's only 2 thousandths of an inch different right in that window. Okay, so that was for the Remington. And I would assume that with the Savage, you're also going to see variations. Okay? Trying to make sure I'm staying on track here. So we're going to jump ahead to machining because we're kind of moving that direction anyway. So as I machine this, there's a lot of test fitting because when I go to put this all together, I put this here and then I thread my action on. When I tighten that up, there's going to be a little bit of what they call crush. So I may have this perfect, okay, and then I, really tighten it up. This is supposed to be tightened down to, I think, 100 foot-pounds with a torque wrench. But when I tighten that up, it's gonna crush things just a little bit. It might be like 2 thousandths of an inch, but I need to make sure that bolt nose recess is cut perfectly. That way I can do that. Okay. There's like no resistance there. Okay. Now, that being said, when I put my go gauge in there, I have to have my chamber cut to a pretty precise depth. Now, like you just saw, it can vary 2 thousandths of an inch. But it needs to be to a pretty precise depth. Okay, so, because again, when I put it in there with my gauge, I want that to just fall. Okay, so I've got this test barrel cut about perfect. And I practiced because I wanted to make sure that I had everything sorted out the way it was supposed to be before I started cutting on this big, beautiful stainless barrel blank. My customer paid a couple $100 for. And that allowed me to test all that out. And now that I've proved it, I can take and cut those dimensions onto this barrel and we're good. So with a Savage, the difference is I could take this barrel blank and I could cut threads all the way down this barrel blank. I mean, it could be nothing but thread. It looks like a piece of all thread with a hole bored down the middle, okay? It's not going to affect how well it fits together with the action. It's not going to affect the headspace. It's not going to affect that, because when I put my recoil lug on here and I put this action on here, what sets my headspace is not the distance that shoulder is cut back, okay? I'm going to run this in on my headspace gauge until it's right where I want it, and then I'm going to tighten this nut down, okay? And that nut is going to hold everything in place. And that's really, really nice, because that allows me to adjust. So if I want a real tight headspace, I can get that adjusted down, you know, pretty precisely. And I don't have to worry about a bolt nose recess, because the way this bolt interfaces, it looks like it just goes up and contacts. Imagine this is the chamber. It contacts the barrel, and it's like that. Well, with the Savage, what's really going on is there's probably about 5 to 10 thousandths of an inch of space between this face and the face of the barrel, or on the chamber end being here. So it looks like it's rubbing up against the back of the chamber, but it's not. So machining a barrel to, you know, get put on a Savage is a lot easier. When I go to cut my chamber and establish my chamber depth, what I do is I measure the depth of this pocket here on the bolt face, okay? And then I'll take my go gauge and I'll cut my chamber, and then I'll check my headspace by putting my go gauge in. And I know I want to have, you know, X amount of gap, so I'll take and I'll measure off the back end of the go gauge to the chamber face here with the micrometer, and I'll do a little bit of math, and that tells me, you know, I got my headspace set right. So it's a little bit easier with a Savage. So bolt construction. Find my Remington bolt here. So bolt construction with a Remington, the bolt is essentially 3 major pieces. So you've got your handle that's silver soldered on, and the head. I've always been taught that this is the part with the ears on it is a plug that's pressed into here, the bolt body, and then it's silver soldered in place as well. So it's essentially 3 pieces. The firing pin, it just threads in the back here, you know, no big. The extractor, the hook that pulls your cartridge out, is right there. It's a spring steel ring that is staked in place. You need to be careful with that, because you can damage it, and if it gets damaged, you just might as well take it to a machinist and say, hey, or I'm sorry, a gunsmith, and say, hey, I need a Seiko or an M16 style extractor to put on my bolt because I damaged the extractor. You're about going to have to just send it back to Remington if you want to have the original one. The extractor on a Savage, so there's a channel cut here with 2 notches, and this claw slips in and out, and it's got a spring and a ball detent to hold it in place. It's real easy to take out, real easy to replace, real easy to find on eBay should you damage it. The spring and the ball detent are also real easy to find should they go flying across the shop into Never Never Land. It's happened to me before. The bolt body on a Savage, so your head is a separate piece, and the spacer is a separate piece, and then there's a spring washer right here and a pin. And you take the bolt, it's got the bolt head has a stem on it that goes down in here. The pin goes through it. The pin has a hole in it, and the stem has a hollow spot for the firing pin to go through. These bolts are wonderful. They're easy to take apart. They're easy to work on. If I want one of those handy dandy tactical Badger Ordnance oversized bolt handles, I just take a 1/4 inch Allen key, put it in there because that is an Allen head screw. I take that out, take the bolt handle, get rid of it, get my new one, put it on here, put the screw back in, we're done. If I want to change from, say, a 223 to a 308, and I don't want to go buy a new rifle because I just like mine, then I can go to somewhere like Pacific Tool and Gauge, and I can order a new bolt head in a 308 caliber. They'll ship it to me, and when I get my new barrel, I take off the 223 barrel, I put on a 308 barrel, I put on a 308 bolt face, I put everything together, make sure it's headspace right, go out to the range and shoot it. With the Remington, I can't just plug and play stuff. It's not a very modular rifle, okay? So there's, I can modify it, but I'm gonna have to machine it on a lathe and probably silver solder a plug in there. And when I do that, I'm going to destroy the factory extractor. It's just the way it is. So I'm going to have to get a Seiko or an M16 style. I'm going to have to put this in a milling machine. I'm going to have to mill a slot right here, drill a hole for a spring, and probably a hole for a cross pin, and put my new extractor set up in. If I want Badger Ordnance bolt handle on here, one of the big fat ones. They have some that will clamp around this. If I don't like the way that looks and I want the real thing, then I'm going to have to, again, put this in a special fixture in a lathe so it's spinning like this. And I need to turn this knob down to I don't remember the size, but anyway, I need to turn that down and thread it, and then I can thread my new bolt handle on here. So modifying a Remington, there's a lot more machine work and expense that goes into modifying a Remington. Recoil lug. So the recoil lug on a Savage, one of the big differences is this little stub right here, okay? So as I go to fit my barrel to my action, that needs to stay in place. And I need to have this recoil lug, this part that hangs down, clocked at exactly 6 o'clock to the top dead center of the receiver. So it'll sit in my stock nice and straight, and when I fire the weapon, the recoil will come back and this will get hit and nice and straight, and all that will be coming from the front of the weapon to the back of the weapon in a nice straight continuous line, not off to one side. So like if I got this like this, that could cause a problem. Okay. With a Remington, I don't have that thing to help hold this barrel out, to help hold the recoil in place. So if I want to keep this, like I said, 6 o'clock top dead center, my action wrench, this is a Remington action wrench, it's used to separate barrels from actions. It's got to have a cutout in it, and that holds the lug in place and in the right relationship to the action as I tighten that up. There's different types of wrenches, like this one. It actually goes into the bolt raceways, okay, and I'll tighten it up like that. But if you notice, I don't have anything to hold my recoil in place, so that's another tool that I have to buy if I want to use that type of action wrench. That was honestly the reason I stopped using that type of action wrench, because it was almost just as much for me to buy the other one as it was to buy the extra tool to hold the recoil in place. And basically what that looks like is it's a metal tab that you screw in here, and it's got two arms that come up and hold the recoil lug in place where it's supposed to be. So that's recoil lug. Accurizing and blueprinting. So the relationship that really, really, truly matters on a rifle and a barrel is the relationship between this face and this shoulder and the chamber. Okay, so when I go to chamber this, I act like this is a barrel. When I go to chamber this barrel on my lathe, I want to make sure that I have the bore of the barrel where the rifling's at running straight, concentric. Okay. And if I make sure that that is true, then any cuts that I make out here to form these features of the threads and the shoulder and all that, they will be in a square relationship to the bore. Okay, so I've got that good and square, and it's like it's supposed to be. Okay, so I mate these two together. If my threads and my receiver are good and 90 degrees to this face right here, that means that as I tighten the barrel up against here, then all that stuff should be in line, and the bolt raceways are good and straight and everything. When I push that cartridge in with that bolt, okay, and lock it in, everything should be in line with the center axis of the bore. Okay, so when you're building a rifle in a factory, you're building hundreds of them a day, thousands of them a day, and you're trying to get them out the door, sometimes that precision suffers so that quantity can be achieved. When you buy a gun off the shelf, you're not getting as good a quality of a rifle as one that would have been custom made in a shop like mine. Okay, I'm not trying to say anything bad about the firearms industry. It's just the way it is. Okay, if you want to be able to buy you know, a Savage or a Remington for $600, you're going to have to give a little bit on the quality. It's just the way it is. But because of that, guys have figured out that they can take these and have them what they call blueprinted or accurized, and that helps out loads with accuracy. So when you do a blueprinting job on Remington, I'll come in here and clean up these lugs back here. I'll clean up the lugs on the bolt. I'll clean up the bolt face. Sorry, I'm getting some text messages. I'll clean up the receiver face right here, and I'll make sure that all this is going to go together great and be in line and good and perpendicular. Now, that being said, you know, with a Remington, making sure that all that is like it's supposed to be takes a lot more time and work than it does for the Savage, okay? Because a Savage has a floating bolt head, okay, which means that it has the ability to shift left, right, up, down, depending on how it, you know, needs to move to have good solid contact with the rear cartridge. I don't have to do as much machining, okay? So what I typically do, and the other thing is, because of the way the extractor is put in here, I have to be very, very careful about how I work on the face of the bolt, because if I destroy that extractor, I have to fix it. With the way that a Savage extractor is put in, I just take the extractor out. I don't even have to worry about it, okay? Just get it out of the way. And then I can go in here and I can machine this face flat. I can machine the inside of the bolt face flat and make sure that, you know, this is parallel and square to this. So when I close that bolt, I know that the bolt face at least is, you know, straight line with the 4-axis. When I go to do this stuff on a Remington, I gotta be really careful, you know, because I can't take the extractor out. I can't take the bolt head off of the bolt body. So I got to figure out, you know, how am I going to hold this now? Because I can't just clamp it with a 4-jaw chuck. Okay. So I got to do something like make this threaded stub here that threads into the back of the bolt. Okay. And then I can take and gently hold the bolt here, take a skin cut here, and I know that this and this are concentric to each other. I can flip it around. I can grip this real good and tight. If I do that on this bolt body, I may damage it. Okay. And then I can hold it in the lathe and put a center in the firing pin hole, and work on it. I know that there are fixtures and, you know, all those kinds of things out there that I can buy, and yes, I can. But the more stuff I have to buy to do a job, the more expensive the job gets, and I don't like doing that to my customers. So I try to figure out how to work with what I have in my shop to save you guys money and still get, you know, a good quality product turned out. So like I said, with the Savage, I just take the bolt head off, take the extractor out, do my thing. And really, with a Savage, to accurize it, as long as the barrel nut is good and square, which if it's not, I can replace that. I go to PTG, Pacific Tool and Gauge, Brownells, Midway USA, whoever. I buy a precision barrel nut. It's like 45 bucks. Replace it. Make sure that this chamber face is good and square, so I may put it in a lathe, dial-incate the barrel in, and then take a marker, paint the end of that, and then, you know, very, very slightly shave some metal off the end. It's like 2/1000 of an inch to make sure it's good and squared. Make sure that my threads are good and clean. I'll take a tap, run it down there, make sure those are good and clean. And with the Savage, that's really it. With the Remington, there's a lot of machine work. So all this to say, I'm a Savage fan. Remington makes a wonderful product. It's been used by the U.S. military, by snipers and, you know, designated marksmen and all these other people that know how to hit things at really long distance for a long time. And it's a good rifle. Savage, I feel, happens to be a little better because when I go to work on it as a gunsmith, it requires a lot less specialized tools. It requires a lot less time, and to the end result, it requires a lot less money out of my customers' pockets, which I'm sure that they really appreciate. So if you love Remingtons, by all means, go buy a Remington. If somebody gave me a Remington right now, I would love it. You know, I would keep it in my gun safe, and it would be a cherished possession, just like all my other rifles. I am probably not going to buy a Remington. I am probably going to buy a Savage. Reason being, I like to change stuff. I like to modify things. That's one of the reasons I became a gunsmith, is because I like work on this stuff. And, you know, if I'm going to get a rifle, I want to get one that I can have fun with. Okay? And it's easier and less expensive for me to modify and work on a Savage than it is a Remington. Okay? Again, has nothing to do with the quality of the product. Remington makes a great product. Savage is just more modular and it's easier to work on. So if I missed anything, if I misrepresented anything, please make note of that in the comments, and I will do my best to get back to you in a timely fashion. This is something that I like discussing with other gunsmiths, because everybody's got their passion. You know, somebody may be like an avid Colt fan. Somebody may be like, "Raw, Smith & Wesson." You know, and there's guys that they're Savage Nazis like me, and other guys they're in the Remington camp, and that's totally fine. So, anyways, that's my opinions, my druthers between Savages and Remingtons. I hope that this has been an informative video. It's been long. Apologize for the length. But like I said, you know, leave your thoughts in the comments. Tell me what you think. Tell me I'm full of crap. You know, argue with me about it. But you know, at the end of the day, that's as a person that's getting paid by you to work on these guns, that's how I feel about things. So I hope you all have a good day, and I'm anxious to hear from you. So if you have things that you would like to see me work on in the future, if you have a firearm that you'd like to see me, you know, do a review of or take apart or whatever, if you have one you want me to work on, feel free to reach out to me at massgunworks@gmail.com. That's my email address here in the shop. I'll do my best to get back with you, and love to hear from you. So hope you all have a good day. Talk to you later.